Finally, let's now go over the cards widget and how to add images. Now we're back in the report editor interface. Now let's take a look at the review topics and sentiment sheet. Here we see the cards widget on the left being used as a filter to select a printer. We can confirm this setup in the EDD mode, where we see that the cards widget has a blue flash, indicating that it will filter the other components on this sheet. Next, we're going to replicate this cards widget by adding another cards widget. But first, let's shift over to the analytical client interface to review how we've added images to our project. To add images in the analytical client, the file source node can be used. In this project workflow, we see that the printer reviews are brought in here. And then down here, we have our files node where we've loaded the printer images for the 4 printer models in our dataset. So here's a quick look at the setup for this node. The setup for the files node is going to be the same as you would use for a folder of documents, except you will need to make sure to check the file masks list and ensure that it contains image file types in the list. If they are not in there, you will need to add them by typing them in. In the executed node, you'll see several columns appear, but you won't see the images per se. What you'll see is a column called full name, which contains the file path as well as the file name for each image. If the name column for your image doesn't match with the column format in your main data set, then we're going to need to modify that name to match. In the Modified Columns node, we can remove any unnecessary columns and adjust the name if we need. At minimum, we need to keep the full name column and a column that is serving as our naming key. Now, if we only need one instance of each of the printer images, we can just utilize this images of printers data set here for the card selector. To ensure proper connections in Enhanced Drill Down, we will need to join the images we have here to the main reviews dataset using a join node like this. And we can see that our images column is attached to our dataset now. Now that we've ensured our images have been loaded to the project, we just need to make sure that those specific nodes have been added to our web report, which they already have. Let's now switch back to the report editor and add a new cards widget. So we will add a new cards widget from the left panel. Now, if we selected the cards widget from the widget subpanel, we will again need to choose which data source we need to use if multiple exist. Now, If we choose one of the combined reviews and images datasets that we have, it will display multiple copies of the same image because it's corresponding to the multiple instances of a given printer in the dataset. If we only wanted to show one instance of each printer, then we would want to select the dataset that only contains images. Now, because we selected one of the combined reviews and images datasets, we're going to see it display multiple copies of the same image because it's corresponding to the multiple instances of a given printer in the dataset. If we wanted to only show one instance of each printer, we would want to select the dataset that contains only images. But before we switch that out, let's look at the component properties for this new cards widget we've added. Now in the columns binding menu, which is this one here, we can see that the settings can be changed for the body, header, and footer of each of the cards. For example, we could change the body to be the text column instead. And we could add a header if we wanted to. We can choose to optimize the sizing of the cards in the sorting and limit count menu, which is this one here. We can change the size mode from fixed to auto if that's what our preferred look is. Now, if we wanted to make this new cards widget only have the 4 printers, we would need to change this to utilize a different data set. To do that, all we need to do is right-click in the widget, then select the proper image data set to use. Now we'll see that there are just 4 cards, but it looks like we need to reconfigure the body of the cards to display the images. Now, in order to make the cards widget interact as a selector for the rest of the sheet, we would need to ensure that it's connected in enhanced drill down mode. Now, with the blue flash selected, this cards widget will update all other components on the sheet. If we intended to keep both of these cards widgets for slightly different purposes, we may want to adjust the EDD connections so that we don't have duplicate widgets. For example, if we deselect the blue flash on this new one, this new cards widget will not filter other components. It will only receive filtering from the original cards selector here. So let's exit EDD mode and see how that type of EDD interaction works in our published report. So with the two cards widgets, nothing happens when you click the new cards widget here that we've added. Which makes sense. Whereas making a selection from the card selector on the left will filter all of our components, including the cards widget we just added. Now we can transform this current functionality we have here into something more refined, such as a smaller panel that confirms our printer selection, or we can decide to just remove this redundancy as we continue designing the report. The key takeaway from this session should be that the widgets are helpful enhancers to a web report and that the interface makes it easy to add and configure these widgets in whatever arrangements we choose. And this concludes our session on working with web report widgets. Thanks for watching.